Hi, this is Josh Trout, artist for Tops, and you are listening to the Rebel Base Card Podcast. Great pull, kid.
If they don't go for this, we're gonna have to get out of here pretty quick, Chewie.
Everything's gonna be all right, kid.
You found the Rebel Base Card Podcast.
She may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts, kid.
I'm your host, Greg McLaughlin.
Have I made a few bad decisions? Sure.
We talk about cards, collecting Star Wars, and to people in the Star Wars community.
Don't worry, we're gonna meet up with some friends of mine.
Look for special episodes called The Breakfast Pack, talking about your favorite Star Wars shows.
We will never have a better chance than this.
All right, let's get started.
Well, perhaps it is time to begin again.
Welcome back, or if this is your first episode, welcome aboard. My name is Greg McLaughlin, and this is the Rebel Base Card Podcast. Good show for you, as my guest is artist Brent Scotchmer. He was on the program a little while back in 2020 and 2021. He is a sketch artist that recently contributed to the high-end Galactic Antiquities set with some gorgeous 5x7 original art in his distinctive style that kind of gives it sort of a faux refractor sheen to the work. And if you go on Instagram, at @bscotchmer, you will see some of the amazing work he has done, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But it is the spring of Scotch, and we'll be right back with more of it right after this.
Hi, this is Adam from Garbage Chute Droids, and you're listening to the Rebel Base Card Podcast. Great pull, kid.
You can waste time with your friends when your chores are done. Now, come on, get to it.
And welcome back. Just wanted to dive into a couple of homestead keeping items before we get into our interview with Brent Scotchmer. Boy, what a week. First off, just want to say thanks to everyone who's had a chance to listen to the last episode we had with Martin Nolan from Top Star Wars Card Trader. Got a lot of positive feedback for that, and a lot of downloads as well. It's been really well received, I think. I enjoyed the interview. I hope you did. If you haven't had a chance, check it out. Talk about a lot of great stuff that they've been doing for their 10th anniversary. All right. We also got news that Masterwork, and this was kind of the OG high-end set, is slated to debut on April 16th. Masterwork used to be something that would come out towards the end of the year. I want to say it debuted in 2015 or 2016 and would come out around December. It was 4 boxes in a box, so to speak, and then each box kind of had a major hit in it. One of the nice things about the Masterwork set was they had on-card autographs. So instead of the sticker autographs, which you typically see, these were on-card autographs. The card itself was a thicker stock. I was never that crazy about it. I love the fact that, the card stock feels great, but you can never really get it into a binder. And so even though it was a higher end set, I'm going to use that in air quotes because that was like maybe a $200 to $300 box. Those days are long gone. This was pre-pandemic. But sometimes it was fun to kind of get those autographs after, on the secondary market, because those are really nice autographs. So I do have a lot of Masterwork cards. I just kind of wait until after the dust has settled, as it were. But it looks like, just from the scuttlebutt that I'm seeing, that it's going to be pretty pricey. I don't think we're talking Galactic Antiquities pricey, but we'll kind of wait and see. I know that some pre-orders were already sold out on some of the big three, and so I'll be kind of keeping an eye on it. And boy, we have had another high-end set. So boom, 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 right? So it's kind of interesting to see this. But the good news is Galactic Antiquities made it into the Star Wars Card Trader app. So hey, if you're like, I didn't have the $3,000 to drop on a box, but I'd still like to kind of see the cards, still like to kind of chase them. Hey, we just got done talking about Star Wars Card Trader, and of course the cards are now in there. It's kind of fun to kind of see those and get a feel for those before. I might actually, throw down on some base on eBay or so forth for the physical ones, but it is kind of nice to kind of see what I'm kind of looking at. So a lot of different ways to use Star Wars Card Trader, but always nice when I see the physical cards go in. And over the years, they go into this app a lot faster than they used to. All right. The latest issue of Non-Sport Card Update magazine, this is for April and May of 2025, has a retrospective article on the Living set. Now, the Living set goes back as long as I do. It was one of my first interviews was on episode, I think 13, with Kris Penix, who was contracted to do these gorgeous pieces of art that they would convert into cards, and they would release them online 2 per week. And I think around card 138, 139, artist Carlos Cabaleiro joined him and Kris tag teamed on these gorgeous portrait cards that ran up until, I want to say, 2024. So 500 cards. The set kind of ended. Topps, originally kind of started with baseball, and then kind of a year later in 2019 did the Star Wars living set. And it was supposed to be this set that just kept going, right? It's a living set, never really had an end. They did bring it to a close. Both artists loved working on it. They really were kind of sad when it kind of ended. A lot of collectors were also sad because during the pandemic, that was one of the easier cards to kind of get, because these were, you went to Topps.com, you ordered whether you wanted one or both, or you could order them in bulk. But, in the days of trying to fight these middle-aged guys in Targets and Walmarts for blaster boxes, you actually could order these, and they were printed, and they would come to you. So the living set's kind of what took us through a lot of the pandemic, in my opinion. At any rate, I was also fortunate enough to be interviewed along with Kris and Carlos and a couple others, and it came out, just hit newsstands. I went to Barnes & Noble and picked up one, and it was really wild to see my name in print. Of course, it's not about me, it's about them, but, when you kind of see your name there, you're like, that's pretty cool. So it was a pretty cool week, to get not only a great episode out with Martin from Star Wars Card Trader, but then to kind of turn around and see this great piece on the living set in a magazine. Anyway, all right. We are going to move into my discussion with Brent Scotchmer. I loved getting him back. He's a collector as well as an artist. These cards he does are amazing. And when I saw his work that he was doing for Galactic Antiquities, I thought this was a great time to kind of get him back on the program. So anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back with my interview with Brent Scotchmer.
Hi, this is Mike Sommer from the Wax Pack Hero Sports Card Minute, and you're listening to the Rebel Base Card Podcast. Great pull, kid.
We're in attack position now, sir.
Hold here.
We're not going to attack.
I have my orders from the Emperor himself. He has something special planned for him. We only need to keep him from escaping.
What's funny is when I do C2 this year, I think there'll be swaths of time, plural, that, I'll get my, I'll check out Artist Alley in the morning. I go there first. I get my interviews in, but I do have a couple things like, Klaus Johnson's there, and I'm like, ooh. Klaus Johnson did do a couple of Star Wars books. He did an old Marvel and like Star Wars Annual 3, but he also did inked a Walt Simonson book that was not in the Marvel comics. Marvel put out a magazine called Pizzazz. They did this serial Star Wars comic. I think they did about 4. It was one issue, but they did like split it up over 4 magazines, and I don't think even the last one hit. But the first one was done by Walt Simonson and Klaus Johnson. I was like, ooh, all right. And this would be my audience, my people would know, when you're racking your bread going, all right, I could have him sign, but the cover's not him. The inside, piece where you see it, or do I get the one where he did the cover? And you're like, because it's like, you want the autograph. You're going to get the autograph. It's going to be great. But it's like, do you want to see it on the cover, or do you just want to know you have it in there? I mean, like, that's, you can just sit there. I'm just going to mull over this.
Because at this point, you don't know if are you going to frame it, or is it just going to sort of be in your little private stash, or, how does this thing end up? Or like, where does this thing end up? To a lesser extent, trading cards are the same, right? They, certain series, you sign the front. Garbage Pail Kids, you sign the front, or used to, and Star Wars, you sign the back for licensing reasons and stuff. So it really depends on how you're going to display these things. This is a good point.
The other thing is that I put the order in today. I didn't realize Johnson did Battlestar Galactica with Walt Simonson. So there is more than one cover. Some gorgeous Battlestar Galactica comic books. I had some of them as a kid that, you're like, oh, okay. And then I was choosing between the two. Here's, once again, this is just like, this is what nerds like you and me would then you're looking for, all right, I'm going to have you sign this covered comic, but I don't see a good place on here. So you're like, then you're choosing a comic that has a little bit of contrast, but then there was this other book that you could clearly see him and Simonson sign together. I'm like, all right, that's it. You know, there's some space where you could see his new signature, but you could clearly see it him. It's not Star Wars, it's Battlestar Galactica. It's like, it's close enough. Once again, these are just things, you know, it's like what a luxury we have where it's like you go to these conventions. And the other thing is, like, you know, Arthur Adams, I think I got about to say, I think they were both at the same one. I think he said he was on an interview with, I think, a David Harper. I think it's a off-panel podcast. There's a plug. It's a good podcast, though. But he said they kind of travel in this group, and they go to these conventions. Well, of course, you know, a lot of the new hot stuff, they get huge lines. A lot of these, like, classic ones. I mean, you know, sometimes Chris Claremont, things like that. But I'm like, sometimes you can just walk up, and I was like, you know, why aren't there a trail of people here having, you know, but I'm not, you know, I don't know.
That's so interesting because, like, it makes me think, like, what is the autograph etiquette? Because are you the kind of person who's like an autograph hunter outside of like a hotel where you're like, please sign exactly right here, please, just right in this little window where I've marked it with masking tape, you know, or do you kind of like, in your mind, you've done all this prep work of like, this is exactly where I'm going to get this person to sign this thing. And they go, oh, hey, Greg, nice to meet you. Like just massive, like over the whole thing. You're like, oh, that's still great. But, you know, now I've got this giant mark all over the cover. You know, I don't think, I honestly can't say I've had enough interactions with, you know, autographs and stuff to really think like, oh, like, what is the etiquette? Like, I guess if you're paying for the autograph, you should be able to go like, oh, right here would be great. Or is that kind of like, is it too transactional?
Well, you know, recently, I was at the Chicago Sports Spectacular, and, you know, nowadays, if you're going after like players and they're doing this, a lot of them will have these autograph policies where it's like you'll have the autograph itself, then you'll have like an inscription, and then they put, you know, guidelines on the inscription, or if you want me to say this. I think Pete Rose also had something like that where it's like, I'm sorry I bet on baseball, or those kind of things where it's like you have this, and this. And then they also, I know for Star Wars sometimes they'll have different rates, or sports or non-sports, they'll have different rates for different things, like flats, like a card, versus like some people actually upcharge for like Funkos or action figures or stuff, because I guess they're, you know, hey, we want to cut, we know you're probably going to flip this. You know, I used to think in '86 when I got one of my first ones, Frank Miller signed. We were at a convention the summer that Dark Knight came out, and I had him sign. I was gonna have him sign his last Miller, at that time, Miller Daredevil. And then when we were waiting in line, we were actually passing by people you could buy from, and I bought, at that time you could still get The Dark Knight Returns 3 and 4. And so I got those, and so I think he signed all 3 of them. I was like, you know, I don't think they really had, at that time, there wasn't any really, I guess, you know, whatever. It was a huge line, and we didn't pay for it. But it's funny now, I'm circling the wagon back around. So after I got done with that, I think I took a Wonder Woman over, because I think George Perez was doing Wonder Woman, and it knocked it out of the park with the first one. But I want to say, I forget, I must have had a Dark Knight sign. Dick Giordano from DC was also there, and I had him sign it, and I think I had him sign the Dark Knights as well. So 1 or 2 years ago, I'm at C2, Klaus Johnson signing. I was like, hey, I'm going to have you sign my Dark Knight. And he's like, oh, that's cool, you got Dick Giordano's signature. That's really awesome. And I didn't realize until just a couple weeks ago, listening to a podcast interview with him, that he was like a mentor to Klaus and all this. And I was like, okay, connect the dots of like a almost 30-year saga. Now I'm like, okay, cool. But, you know, I never really did the poster thing a lot of my friends do, where they get everybody to sign it, right? And you just carry this from con to con.
It's a commitment.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle choice, but it's so fascinating. You know, when we're talking about autographs and, you know, how you sign it, where you sign it, and then, you know, I used to have people just sign it to me, or when my son was little and we lived near a ballpark, sign it to my son, right? So that kind of tells the person right away without telling him, like, look, I'm not flipping it. This is for me, or this is for so and so. So this is where it's at, and this is where it's going to be. Because otherwise, like, I'm not going to buy an autographed baseball to Tim. I'm not Tim.
That's cool to think. Like there is all. I feel that having like one of my sort of personal things that I will try to do is if I happen to run into someone who's known, or I'm working with someone who's known, and or doing gigs with people who are known, is like I just try to avoid that whole thing because you just don't know whether like you got a great interaction, and I had this with like sadly he's passed. He was the actor who Squid Face. He was at IC for a couple of years in a row, and him and I became pretty good friends. And that was a thing where we were just talking, like it was just a lot of talking and stuff. And then at the end of it, it was like, "Oh, did you actually want this autograph?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, of course." Like there was this kind of lead up that was like, "Look, I'm not here to just pay my $30 and get the SIG and then like, and go onwards, like the world's a big place and you don't often get to meet these people that often. So if you can have a couple of minutes, and obviously like you've brought something to these guys that's kind of, I won't say obscure, but it's something that they're like maybe isn't just the normal thing, right? And that's a conversation starter in itself. It's kind of like when I've seen people, they'll go to a con and they'll see say Kevin Smith, and rather than bring him the DVD of Clerks, they bring him the VHS of Clerks, because
right.
The VHS is just, it's got an extra little like, or it's got an extra little bit of nostalgia to it, and it's kind of like, wow, I'm sure he sees 1,000 DVDs a day and only sees maybe 2 or 3 VHS a day. So yeah, like I like that. Like I personally like that thing. Like, what can I do to make this interaction kind of like something a little bit different? Like, what am I going to bring something that's like super obscure, or something that's got, like you had, signature of someone else on it,
right,
that they don't necessarily come across that often.
And even now, it's like now I'm almost like prepping for it. It's semi creepy in a way, because it's like, all right, I'm prepping for my interaction. This is what I'm, because it's like you just want to have it organic. But on the other hand, I'd like to ask him about the fact that, did he know that this made it in Marvel UK? And how did you feel about, like, now most people would get, like, I've seen, like, I think it's Bob McLeod. There's been a couple other Marvel guys who Star Wars was like a one-off, right? And sometimes I'll do that. I'll look at the list of who's an artist alley who did Marvel, and I'm like, you go through their bibliography, and you look and see, did they do any Star Wars? And they're usually known for X, Y, and Z, but this. And sometimes I think one of the two. This was a guy, and now I can't think of it. It was just before COVID really took over, and he was like, "Yeah, sometimes I think they got the work. I think they got a little something Star Wars wise, either toys or whatnot. I think one of them actually said, I got a bunch of toys for doing this, from Kenner or from Marvel or something like that. And so they either did it, but the way some of them did this back in the day, it's like they would just get these gigs, or like." A lot of them are freelance and are like, hey, can you help me out? Can you ink this, or can you pencil this? And so a lot of their work is just, they just happen to be at the right place, right time, or they just got this assignment, as opposed to when they got a regular gig and a run in X, Y, and Z book. And so on the one hand, I'm like, I'd like to ask him about that. I'd like to ask him with a microphone. So that, because that would mean that gets you several levels of like, had an interaction, got the autograph, got a little piece of tape. But it's just one of those, like, all right, how far can you push your luck? Definitely, this is why when I do C2, I do it early on the Friday when everybody's still prepped. They're up. I go, like immediately, like you're in the big line, and as soon as they open that door, everybody's going for the exclusive stuff. I'm like, I know exactly how quick I can get to Artist Alley, hit the people I need to hit, and then before they get
already beat down. They're not already beat down from like 1,500 interactions in 3 hours, and all that sort of stuff, and all that plays again. You've got it sounds like you've got this nailed down to like there's a system in place for like, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to catch these guys at their best. They're going to be fresh. And they're not going to be too worn out. And I'm going to have this, like you got this whole system of like how you're going to do it, and it probably yields great results, right? Like, more open to sort of having a few minutes because
Right.
it's not in the heat of the prime day and all those all those different things. Yeah.
I think my first T2, I think I, made the mistake of going in the middle, and it's just one of those where it's like, hey, look, the guy was fine. It was just really busy, wrong time. And then you go, okay, lesson learned. And it wasn't the end of the world. I mean, we have since, every time I see him, hey, great interactions. It's just one of those things where it's like, nah, it just wasn't a time or place, but you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it.
Yeah.
But I have to also feel, every now and then it's great when I look in a Instagram feed and all of a sudden I see one of your pieces up, and there is, you see a lot of like, oh, there's Brent. It's just like there's just stuff about yours that is just like I could pick it out of a lineup a couple of football fields away because I'm like, oh, that's him. So
the whole point. I'm in a league of like super talented, up potentially 300 or 400 people who get to lend their hand to things like Star Wars or to Topps Star Wars trading cards in general. And me being the insecure person that I am, I'm like, gosh darn it, how am I going to do something that looks different to everyone else? And this the fake refractor, this sort of like simulated refractor thing that I do, just, I don't know, I guess it just hit the right thing. And now there's all these little like experiences that springboard off of that. Like now we'll see as people, because breaking is a thing. So like now that when I first started doing work with trading card companies, like there's been box breaks forever, but before COVID, it wasn't like as gigantic as it is now. And but I love now where like there are people there are the breakers who know the product pretty well. And those ones where like you'll see them rip a pack and then they'll turn the stack of cards to the side and they'll see the airbrush bleed where all the different colors. So my card actually doesn't, the image on the front of the card actually bleeds through to the sides. And so you can actually see my sketch cards before you've even seen them because you can see the rainbow effect sort of bleeds down the thin edge of the card. And those kind of things are really cool. And like I've seen recently with Galactic Antiquities, having that 5x7 format for the sketch cards was even better. And even myself, like when I was doing them, I was like looking at them in this giant format, thinking like, these are going to go down really well. So, get them as vibrant as possible and kind of have them, like you said, you can see them from a mile away, right? Which means that hopefully if someone wants to have one on their shelf in their collection, that you can see that from a mile away as well, and it draws the eye.
See, you're a perfect guest because there's about 30 questions just from that bite alone that I just like a savory steak that's just laid before me. I'm going, oh, there's that piece, there's that piece, there's that piece. How did you kind of attack something like a Galactic Antiquities that's going to be bigger, but to make it, yours, but a little unique for the collector who's maybe seen your work, has your work? What are you trying to make it fresh?
I mean, I don't even know that I was looking to make it fresh. I was just excited to show what I've done before, but to show that it translates into a bigger scale. Not all the work. Not everyone who's a sketch card artist is an everything else artist. A lot of people who do work for these trading card companies don't really do much artwork that isn't 2.5 by 3.5 inches. So, possibly like a lot of them, with me, I don't really know like how is this going to work? Like does this only work on this very tiny format, or is this going to work in a big format? Like, because there's a lot of space there, and you could argue that 50% of the work I do is in the coloring, in the color of airbrushing stuff. And do you lose the effect as soon as it's big? Like, do you kind of, when we blow this up to 5x7, is all of a sudden it not going to look like a refractor? Is it just going to look like some sort of weird interpretive abstract piece or something? So me, because it is a job, the things that go through my mind are A, what is the deadline? And B, is it going to work? So like, it's kind of like you do your job every day when you go to your job, like, your job, like you knowing how to do your job is not really your concern every day because you've been doing it for so long. You kind of like wake up and you go like, what roadblocks are going to like show themselves today? Because I know how to do the work. The work is easy. Well, not easy, but the work is the work, and I've been doing it long enough to know how it's done. But what's going to pop up? What happens if I airbrush all 30 of these things and I've already put in 30, 40 hours into this set, and I take a step back from my desk here and I go, these suck. Like, then what? Like, what's my plan B? Like, as I'm doing them, like, all right, cool. Like, what's the plan B? Do I do a border around these? Do I all of a sudden change my mind and do I do like a thick black outline around them like the vintage stickers? Like I'm constantly thinking of like, all right, we're moving on. We're moving to the next stage of this piece because I batch mine. So I maybe do my work a little bit differently to other artists where so someone may start and finish a single sketch card. All of mine are done all 30 at a time. So I pencil all 30 all at once. I airbrush the coloring all 30 all at once. Then I do the next thing, whether it's paint or whatever, all 30 all at once. And then it's only at the very end with white and black pencils and stuff do I sort of do them at like one at a time. But by the time I've got to them being done one at a time, I'm already 85% finished with the job.
Okay.
And so, and I've had these discussions with tops before about they're like, oh, look, if there's an issue here or whatever, just send in what you've got. And I'm like, well, the issue is I don't have anything because I don't do my work one at a time. So if I was to say miss a deadline, I would be missing, I couldn't send them 5 completed cards out of 30 because that doesn't exist. That doesn't work like that. The only point at which I could send in 5 cards out of 30 is when I'm already like 90% finished with the entire thing. So that's a downside to what I do. And it's also the downside to kind of, again, like I'm doing this process on the entire set at once. I don't get a chance to sort of go, here's one completed piece. I'm not happy with this. How will I change it on number 2? I don't get number 2. I get kind of like, holy crap, like I have 30, I've got 30 cards that have all been done like this. What am I going to do? Usually it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy. The only times I've had like major dramas would be like if I put the airbrush coloring, if I put it on too thick and the paint gets what we call plasticky, so it's shiny, which means the pencils don't sort of stick to it. But then I've had to add an extra process where I've had to go through and sand the cards so that the pencils will now drag on them. Or did I put too much water in the mix? Now the cards are all soaking wet and they've all curved like a letter C. And then I have to delay the entire process now by 4 days while I go and clamp these under some blocks to get them to flatten out again. Those are the kind of things that I encounter. Not necessarily sort of like, how will I approach it? I think I've got my approach. I think what I do works well. And I think that as much as like sometimes I'd like to do something more traditional, every time I do those things, even though they turn out great, I kind of go like, it's not like, I know that if this ends up on eBay or Facebook or Instagram or whatever, that it's not going to be automatically like, oh, that's a Brent piece versus what people are used to. It's kind of like stick with the hits, you know?
Did you try out a couple on the larger, because with it, Galactic Antiquities, what they were 5x7s, right?
Very thick.
Did you try a couple of demos first to kind of see, or did you just trust the process?
No, it's just the same. It's the same thing, just much bigger. Yeah, it's like for sure. Like when I'm doing the coloring, I'm I'm having to work bigger, so I like my brush strokes and stuff are going up, and I'm having to make sure that I'm getting that sort of the way that I lay the colors on, like in the order that I do them in, like if all right, blue first, then green, then yellow, then red, and like it in a particular pattern to kind of get that effect. But no, I kind of just you got to be confident. You've got to be confident in what you do, and it's the same as if like, I recently did like 4 shows at a fringe festival playing guitar. I don't normally do that kind of work. It was more of like like a late night variety show, TV show sort of thing, and it was being taped and the whole thing. And as soon as the nerves come in, 20 years of being self-employed has taught me to just go, get out of my head. This is the job. You know what the job is. You know you can do it. Just do it. Like, and at the risk of sounding like a motivational speaker or something like that, that really like is the secret to like everything that I do is like every time I start to get it, and you should be nervous every time you do something, right? Especially like with the trading cards, like you're working for one of the, like I'm working for the brand that I collected as a kid, so there's pressure there. I'm also working on one of the biggest, most valuable licenses in the world. That's some pressure there, right? And you're going to get scrutinized by the people who pull these things, whether you like it or not. And I don't agree with it, whether you like it or not. There are always going to be the people who go, I paid 120, 130 in the case of Galactic Antiquities, like, $1,500 for this box of cards, and this is what I get. And then all the artists have to rush to the defense of the artist and say, hey, like deadlines, payment, and the 10 other reasons why, like you shouldn't judge, you shouldn't judge. Yeah. So like, yeah, there should be pressure, and it should sort of be healthy that you should be nervous, because I think nerves, it will be what makes you want to at least try to do a good job. It's not like a phone in, like, I'm not there. I'm just like, I don't go like, oh, there's $10. There's $10. Like I don't sort of like do it like that. I just sort of go, well, somebody else is going to pay $1,500 or whatever it is for this box. Or if it's a regular, I mean, how much even is it? It's been a couple of years since I spoke to you, but I feel like the last time we were kind of talking about hobby boxes, you could get a hobby box of Star Wars for like $80. Is that like, are those days gone?
Those days are long gone, my friend.
Right.
I would say because the Chrome Black releases on 3/19. This'll dip. It is the spring of Scotch. So this fits well into it. But I think even then, the MSRP on the Chrome Black was, let's just say it was under 2, like 150 or something like that. But that was like a 1-pack, 4 or 5 cards or something like that. The high tech was a pack of 20, I want to say, but it was also feeding around like 200. So it's been, kind of this 200 to 300. I think one of the last almost quote unquote regular one, like now Flagship came out in 2023, but it was more geared towards retail, and they had regular blasters, jumbo boxes for 60, 70, and then you had a little higher up. But yeah, I would say the days...
Hyperspace like that? When was the last time we had kind of like a 24 packs per box, 6 cards per
Hyperspace,
pack?
Hyperspace was around there. But I want to say Hyperspace was running around 3.
Wow.
But that's the thing. It's like Galactic Antiquities, and of course now there's gonna be a lot of DMs going, how come you? Anyway, but I would say that Galactic Antiquities was coming out at 15 or MSRP 15, and a separate question.
And then it ended up at
3,500 for. There was a time where it was 3,500, and some of the regular outlets, news outlets, the shows for, Star Wars and things like that were listing it, and I was just like, this is unprecedented. There have been high-end sets, real high-end sets, we've been around if we've seen anything from Masterwork seems like a deal now when it was used to be like or in the $200 to $300 bucks, and you're like that's a steal because those were like 4 mini boxes hit per box, blah 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 blah. But now, and you could even buy them. You remember when Star Wars Black and White or Return of the Jedi Black and White? I think you could get them the mini boxes for like $75. But now it's because they have gone. It's almost been high-end release, high end. I think Hyperspace is close to regular, but it's all been Chrome, a lot of Chrome. Last year's Topps Chrome was about to me one of the last regular type releases where you got like close to Hyperspace, where you got a lot of packs in a box, but it was still fairly high. But I think it would be seen now as more of a pedestrian type release. And, with these last ones, especially Galaxy, how Galaxy has become a big flagship release for them because it just hit. It was in the right place at the right time during COVID, and all of a sudden, a lot of people lost their minds.
It's interesting, really, because I recall possibly the last time we spoke was like when Fanatics was just, the ink was drying on the Fanatics takeover. And we might have been having some discussions around what do you think that looks like, and Fanatics model is kind of direct to consumer for trading cards. That's kind of the way they wanted to do it, and with the COVID thing and breakers and flipping and Prism Basketball 2019, where trading card companies were looking at it and going, we don't have to sell a box of NBA hoops for $150. We could sell it for like $450. So now like everything is kind of inflated, and trading cards became kind of almost like a investor flipper kind of product. And so you see that now, like although I don't follow very closely with kind of like the latest and the greatest, just because the pricing is prohibitive. You do see stuff as this like, wow, Fanatics, it goes on sale on this date, and then 3 seconds later, it's completely sold out. And does it leave the long time collector, the man on the street, the you and me, does it leave us out? Is that partially because Fanatics are not doing the standard sort of distribution model where like you could, like Topps used to distribute to like a Go GTS type company that would be like a nationwide distributor, and then all of your hobby stores would then buy their cases for their brick and mortar through this distributor. Whereas I believe now it's just all Fanatics direct. And I'm not even sure, like I know at least their vision for it was that they weren't really going to do hobby store type of stuff. Like, that if you were a brick and mortar, that eventually they weren't going to sell direct. You just have to buy from Fanatics direct.
I still see plenty of action at my local store where they will have, you'll see what the MSRP is. Like Topps might sell it, but you'll definitely still, to me, I still see the boxes show up at my local store, right? Chicagoland Sports Cards, they were at the Spectacular, and they have them there, and I could still get a Book of Boba Fett hobby tin for about $60-$70. It's not bad actually. But you'll see that the higher end prices, because I think they have to price accordingly to the market. If you're lucky, I think if you were the casual, the older or the casual collector, or the one that was like just a tune up, like me, who kind of was like, all right, I'm now keyed on boxes. Before you did have some time during pre-orders and maybe as it first came out. Now it's, what I try to tell folks and what I try to do is like, all right, if something kind of came in range and it was right, great. But I do think with just the sheer amount of releases and the type of releases, I might say, all right, well, now we've had 3 or 4 releases back to back to back. I was worried all last year because we didn't see much, and all of a sudden I figured they were going to stack. But now it's like, well, hey, if you were interested in high tech and Buddy with all those different variant backgrounds, that's going to be a fun chase, Mr. Base Chaser. Yeah. But you could say, well, if everything is kind of geared by Fanatics as far as like the shiny and new release, let's trickle back a few. And that's where kind of patience goes into play, and you can kind of play secondary market and say like, well, if I want to go after this set, I'm going to wait and see, like the breakers, once they get done with once they get their hits and they start putting those base sets out, great, I can get it. Although it's the least exciting experience for a collector to go, you want that chase. I want to put this together.
That is the spread of do you want the base set at sort of, even if it just means the total lack of joy of just buying the base set, but realistically, the days of being able to buy wax packs for 25, 50 cents and building that base set up over a couple of years, at a cost of whatever it is, those days are gone. And that base sets can be difficult to complete if they're very big. Then you've got these ultra premium sets where there might only be like you said, a high tech, right? Like if there's only 20 cards in that pack, I mean, a couple of them are going to be parallels, then an insert and something else, right? So you're only getting, there might still be 100 card base set to that set, but you might only be getting, right. And so you might only be getting 6 or 7 base cards in that box. That's a really tricky set to complete. It's great. It encourages trading and all these other things, but I wonder that even for you, not to flip it on the interview onto you, but like that, how do you then navigate through do you just accept that if I've got a few high-tech cards, then I at least have a piece, at least I've got a taste of this set, or do you still kind of go oh man, I really want to complete this set, but it's going to cost me a fortune and it's going to take me forever?
That's a great question, Brent. No, it is, because what I have done is, for example, it gets real tricky as far as base sets, especially since they've gotten away from doing ones for the shows and so forth, where it's not just scenes from blank. It's portraits, lots of portraits. So then you start to go, well, what makes this release, which is portraits, profiles of Star Wars figure, versus this other, they all kind of blend together after a while. And so two things you can do. One, I think it was one of the first times I did it, was in 2022's or 2023's Finest. I started going after to see how low the autograph prices would go, and I think I landed on, there was a few of them, but I landed on Oliver F. Davies, C.O. Bibble from the Phantom Menace. And I started rainbowing his signature, and I think for about 200 to 300, I got all but the 1 of 1. I think I got an of 5. And then the game became how cheap could I get this particular parallel of signatures? Mm-hmm. And I've done that with Finest, because some releases I go, all right, it's going to be too expensive for me to get this base set. And you make up another great point with high tech. It's even going after that base set, or a particular type, you'd have to get I have to remember, if I need to get this card, it has to be with this background. Otherwise, it's a different whatever. Yeah. Even those might be a higher valued base set. So you do have to figure out, is it something I really want to chase, or when it's all said and done? Do
you want to be paying $3 and $4 and $5 for a single base card and stuff like that,
Yeah, and then you kind of look at it and you go, and then you put it away. It's a chase. But recently, my store was they were getting rid of boxes of blasters of Flagship, and even on a hobby rip night, they were selling them, and I think it was $10 a blaster box. And wow. I remember that there was a ton of base in these. It was almost like a regular blaster, 10 packs, 6 to 8 cards, and so from one blaster you could get 45 base cards, and it's a 100-card set. And you're like, wow. So I got 3 or 4.
All of a sudden, very reasonable.
Yeah, then it's almost like a pack going, and then math gets involved, because it's all right, if I was getting that box of Flagship, I'm going to get 45. Well, the next blaster obviously is not going to be 45 cards that I already don't have. Then it's going to be so each one, and this could be any blaster. I don't care what release it is. If it has a blaster, it is a law of diminishing returns, because it's the first 2 or 3 great. And then once you get to your 4th, 5th, or 6th box, you almost have to go, this really isn't, unless I'm chasing inserts, which I think at this point, I've had this base set a couple times over, but I was looking for particular inserts. And to be honest, for say a $10 or $20 rip, if to speak the lingo. It was just kind of fun to open them because I didn't know what I was going to get. There was a slight chance on those to pull something like an auto, and I'm like, you know what? If you spent $10, so that it ended up on those, and I think I still have one left to open. It was just more for the fun to rip it because now it's so rare to see product.
And it's a rare experience for you to spend, say, $100 and walk away with 450 base cards. That's a rare thing now, right? Like,
yeah.
Not to say that, like, at the end of the day, like, yeah, how often are you looking at the base cards? How much of how much space do you have? And yeah, the images are repetitive in that. I really liked the old Galactic Files sets because they were like stupid huge sets, right? They were like 300 card base set, but at least you got to see, like, it was spread so far across the universe of the Star. It wasn't just the movies, it was the cartoons, it was the comics, it was action, it was everything. Like, and so those Galactic Files 1 and 2 series, like those, you had a much better chance at sort of seeing something that you probably haven't seen on a base card before. That it was either whether it be a character or something, like it wasn't going to be the same Mark Hamill, like I said, side profile photo that you see on every set.
You bring up a good point with Galactic Files also because they were profiles. And at the time, not necessarily something you saw in a lot of releases at the time. So, and yes, there was, high tech goes back to 2016. Galaxy goes back to, to 93. So there's these sets they're still releasing today that are very similar to their brethren a long time ago. But yeah, it seemed like, whereas in the 90s they were trying anything from Galaxy to wide vision to then, chromium type effects that looked like they were just seeing what was sticking out there. Now it seems like they've kind of hit their over the last couple of years, you've seen like, okay, they've hit their stride. They kind of know at least what they want to try to do. We're still trying to maybe figure it out, but it's still, I think an early thing that I was concerned with was, as well as I do, sketch cards require effort. It requires an art director. It requires, back and forth. It requires okays. In the reign of the Superfractor and the 101s and, not necessarily caring if it's a scene from a thing, was sketch cards going to even be in the mix?
That was my number one. I wouldn't say it was necessarily well, it was kind of like a half prediction. Like my kind of half prediction when I heard that Fanatics were going to take over Topps was that, like, sketch cards are going to be done. Like, they're, and in a way, like, they are very rare still, and their Fanatics have a different kind of way of recruiting artists and how they do them and roster them and stuff now. But, like, I thought it were like a, Department of Fanatics efficiency was going to come along and go like, this is a nightmare. This is like tens of thousands of dollars in FedEx Express boxes to all over the world. to all these people, we need to check everything. We need to make sure they're not violating these 2 and 3 pages of things not to do. I honestly thought that when Fanatics took over Topps, they were going to look at sketch cards and go, nah, I don't think we will. Like, but to their credit, they did it, and maybe they see the value in kind of like it's a sketch card in a way is kind of like they are one of ones, right? So it's an alternative to like a one of one Superfractor. Right. It's a one of one piece of art, and maybe for them that's still that's a worthwhile endeavor, and obviously people still love them as well, right?
And I'm also wondering, you have also still done work for Garbage Pail Kids?
Yes, yeah. As far as, again, their rosters are different, so I'm not on everything. Right. They don't. What the old Topps used to, if you were on Star Wars and Garbage Pail Kids, you would just get invites for everything, even if they overlapped. even if you were doing 2 and 3 and 4 sets at once, you were on that roster. Whereas now they actually look at it and they go, well, this guy's already doing this set, so he's not going to get on this set. So like if I sign on for Hyperspace and they're doing also planning sketches for a different product, I wouldn't get both at the same time. They would be like, no, this guy's working over here. We'll get someone else to work over here. And they are quite efficient like that, in the sense that they don't, they seem to manage the artists a little bit more. So yeah, I still do a bit of everything for everyone. Obviously not just tops as well. Like I unfortunately had to turn down a couple of sets for Upper Deck recently, Marvel and DC stuff. And I do little things here and there for RRParks cards, Richard Parks, and I still do art and things for POG, the milk cap company POG, which are sort of making a bit of a resurgence. So, like I'm fine with not getting in everything because I honestly can't handle it all. But yeah, like you hopefully you get the offers that you want, and those jobs come along and you can fulfill the deadlines, because it's come pretty close recently. Like, so I'm happy to take, like, I'm glad I'm not doing 6 sets at once. There have been times where I've been doing like Stranger Things and Garbage Pail Kids and Masterworks and Galaxy all at once, and I've got like 150 blank sketch cards on my desk, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? So yeah, no huge complaints there.
I do love the fact that you are able to diversify, right? Because I thought about this when, of course, there's some folks that maybe they were only doing Upper Deck, or maybe they were only doing Tops, or maybe they were only doing, Cryptozoic, or, one of these other ones where, if you weren't getting the work, then you're like, I'm not getting the work. But I think you get to a point where I think you would, and I think it's just got to be like a faucet that turns on and off all throughout the year. It's like, I think you probably just have to build into your head. It's like, there are going to be times where I'm going to be super busy, maybe sometimes where I'm not, but it's still nice that I'm getting checks from different, it's not all from the same company.
Sure. Yeah. And it's a different thing as well. There were times there where, I'm not really sure how it works these days. Again, because the sets are not the same. It's not like the old Tops, pre-Fanatics Tops, were releasing 5 and 6 and 7 releases a year.
Exactly.
And those weren't all Masterworks was the only premium one in that whole roster. So you would see 6 releases a year from Tops, but every single one of those 6 releases was the 24 packs, 8 cards per pack setup. So there was this thing of like, well, is there too much product now? Like, people are gone and just blown like $1,200, $1,300 on a case of this product, and then hot on its heels 2 weeks later, like Galaxy comes out, and then like 3 weeks later, like Finest comes out or something, and then 3 weeks after that, something else, like Skywalker Saga or something else comes out, and then like people were like, we don't have this kind of like, we don't have this kind of money to just be dropping like $2 and $3 grand every month on a case, or even on a box, even if it was $150 a box, like, at a certain point, like Tops were releasing a Star Wars product every 2 months. So for the average person, like, but Fanatics now, like, I think you see more premium, releases, like you said, high tech, where it's like 1 pack, or Black, which is like 1 pack, or Antiquities, which is kind of like an out of the league sort of thing. Like, this is like your birthday and Christmas and Easter and wedding anniversary present all rolled into one, that sort of thing. I've got another question for you, Greg, because we've done this a few times, and I know you pretty well, but I don't know you that. What came first for you? Did Star Wars come first, then trading cards, or trading cards first, then Star Wars? Because I know what mine was.
For me, it was the movie, but not by much, because we didn't. I saw the original Star Wars at a drive-in. For the longest time, it was my first and only drive-in experience, but it was after it hit the theaters. And I think my sister said my dad had actually went and seen it and then it was like, hey, I think you guys might want to go see this. But by the time I had seen it, and then all of a sudden, like we had, as I've said before, we lived in a one stoplight town with one little, pharmacy that had a newsstand that sold the comics. It's where I got my comics. It's where my friends in school got their comics, but they also where they got their cards. And I remember seeing the cards in the store, but I think the blue had been out for a while. And so unfortunately, now I can't do the forensics. Like even, it's kind of funny. It's like, a lot of these Star Wars films I remember seeing when they first came out, but I'm not sure if it was like it might have been day one, it might have been that first weekend. I remember Revenge of the Sith.
So at the risk of aging you, how old are you then when you see Star Wars?
I'm 7. Yeah.
Oh, you are the poster child for what that movie was aimed at.
Exactly. But it's funny because the comics that I got, Marvel had, I think, reprinted and packaged them in bags of 3. I think the first 3 and then the second 3, there were 6 comic books. And so mine were reprints. And so by the time I got them, I think they might have been one of those, those little like spinner stands where you could get them. And so, which is fine because at one point, I think I'd taken them to school and Mom put my name on them. And I'm like, no, they're not worth anything anyway. They're all beat up because they were well read. I read them thing cover to cover. But yeah, I would say sometime in the summer, the trading cards came and I remember enough to know that the 3rd series, which was yellow, I had more of than any of the others, the first 2. Right. So it really must have clicked in that 7-year-olds that, oh, this is a thing, whether it was just an occasional, because I did have some reds, I did have some blues, but not nearly as many as the yellows and then the greens. And then in the 78, when the oranges came out, the last set, I don't think they were printed as much as the first ones. And so I had less of them. It was only 2015, 2016 that a buddy of mine actually helped me finish my orange set when I got back into collecting, because I didn't have them all. But I can remember, those puzzles, the puzzles on the backs of those cards drove me nuts because I would constantly put them out and I'd see the ones I'm missing. And I do remember an odd flea market here or there going to and seeing some. And then in the 80s, there was a card store that popped up because cards were starting to become popular. This is before the big junk wax era. And then I did complete a lot of the ones I was looking for. I remember I have my Post-it notes at the time where I was like marking down what I was missing. But yeah, and it was that started into football, then baseball. And so Close Encounters.
Yeah, that's what I was curious of was like, were you already collecting baseball cards and then you got into was it the movie that, was it kind of like, for Star Wars, is it like you see the movie and then you want all the merch, or did you sort of see the cards? Like in my case, like in Australia, we got everything pretty late. And so like for me, the cards were the first thing we see before we see the movie, essentially, like whether it's, in some cases I never got to see the movie. Like I still don't know why they were selling RoboCop 2 cards when it was an R-rated movie marketed at 6-year-olds. But like for me, I just collected cards. It was the Garbage Pail Kids. It was Batman, the 89. I'm born in 83. So like when I'm 5, 6, 7 years old, it's 87, 88, 89. So for me, it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's Batman. It's it's Ghostbusters, Garbage Pail Kids. And I missed Star Wars. Star Wars came back around for me in like 94 when they had the special edition movies and stuff came out. I did remember as a kid in the 80s, like the Ewoks movies, like Caravan of Courage and Battle of Endor and stuff like that. But I just missed, I was born when Jedi came out. And, again, so I missed the cinema run for all the original trilogy. I was way too young. Probably saw them on television at some point when I'm a kid. But when the 90s comes back around, then that's when the special editions come out. Then for the trading cards, they had the wide vision cards of the special editions. That was probably the first Star Wars trading card set I collected, was the Topps wide vision ones. And then not again until when I start actually working around, the company and stuff. So, yeah, I was just curious for you. Like, I was like, oh, I wonder where this starts. Like, is he a card guy or is he a Star Wars guy? And where did they sort of intersect and stuff?
Well, I remember having the 76 King Kong cards, and I had quite a bit of them. I
made those.
Tops.
Is that Don Ross? Oh, Tops.
As a matter of fact, on that set, you can see there's the movie facts, and with the film reel that goes across that pop up in the Star Wars sets, just like in 76 Star Trek, the portrait stickers are the same design that are going to be used in that first set of the blue 1977 cards. And so one of the things over the years and going back and seeing some of the non-sport, like, the close encounter, the ET uses kind of a makeshift blue star field, like the black hole ones. And so at the time, you see this where there's Tops is still going, like, let's just see Planet of the Apes. We got this. You're going in, and all of a sudden after Star Wars, everybody and their mother gets a set. And I go back to Moonraker getting like, it's well over 100. It's like 100, 120, 150. And I'm like, this movie doesn't deserve, great movie. All right. Moonraker, it's of its time, but I'm like, the amount of cards, if you think of it like the Star Wars 66 cards per set, it would be Empire Strikes Back that got 130, that got it doubled. Then you're going, why did Moonraker get this? But then again, it's like some of these ones, then when you think of like the time that you remember those, like the Batman, I remember Batman Series 1 and Series 2. I got them, Dick Tracy, all these ones, Ghostbusters 2, a lot of this, it's a whole different thing. But these designs, these departments, these cards aren't made in a vacuum. A lot of the stuff you can kind of trail through and you can see. And now I think you're finding a lot of those 90s sets that the colors, as I was dabbling with a Galaxy in the custom cards I do. I was taking some of the artwork that I was starting to I'm kind of getting there. It's going back to my high school and just starting to draw again, but I've got my level. It has to go back up. You have to really work at it, right? Obviously, art takes work. But in order to capture that 90s feel, it's amazing now. It's like, it seemed like there was a lot more tools digitally and with print, and they're doing all the fonts. And now you can look at a 90s card and you go, yep, that's it. there's just something about it that you can't.
Was the original, like, was when digital just started to creep in, like in the 70s and 80s, there wasn't really a lot of, like, it would be fascinating to see how it's all done, all the typesetting and all the different stuff, right? Because a lot of it would have had to have been manual, like the blue star field, like all of those stars are hand drawn. Somebody had to draw that pattern, and that's pretty cool. But and then again, like, as the chase for like the perfect condition one goes and stuff. I mean, like, I keep saying to people, like, you have to remember this was a vehicle for selling bubblegum.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like, how do we sell the same unflavored bubblegum next year? Well, we need a movie license to kind of like package this same bubblegum flavored bubblegum, and we need to keep doing that for 20 years. And so, like, yeah, it makes sense that you're going to see the same thing. Like, why would you draw a different kind of film strip for Star Wars than King Kong? Like, why would you? We have it. It's there. Like, why pay someone extra more work to do that thing, But I like it because, like you said, it is a through line. It's kind of like, because now you can kind of say, well, these King Kong cards have like a place in my Star Wars card universe because it shows the first time that they use this particular typeset, or thing, and it kind of shows you the history of the company and how things kept developing and stuff. Like Ghostbusters 2 was like, that was my favorite. The blue with the yellow lightning bolt sort of like pattern around the outside, and it and I'm a massive sucker for behind the scenes stuff. Like, my favorite thing ever. There was ever a thing on television that ever came up that it was like 30-minute special on the making of Terminator 2 or something like that. And my 9-year-old, 10-year-old self is just like, oh my God, I can't believe this is going to be so good. Just because I love behind the, and Ghostbusters 2 had the SFX cards, and it sort of show, or the concept drawings cards. It's like, oh, here's the concept for the two courtroom ghosts, or here is the here's a them sort of filming something. And Star Wars had that as well. And same with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. When Topps released that set, they showed like all the turtles with Jim Henson, who'd helped create the suits and stuff. And I was like, wow, this is, you're getting to put a face to the name of Jim Henson, which is a 10-year-old. There's no internet, so you can't do that. The only reason I knew what Jim Henson's face looked like was because of this one Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles card where he's sitting with all the turtles, with all of the puppets that he helped make. So like, I'm a big sucker for behind the scenes, the making of that kind of stuff. I wish they would do more of that. I think that would add an extra little flavor into the trading cards as well, as to sort of bring, like, again, we've been talking about repetitive images and stuff, right? Like, every now and then you'll see, like, they'll bring into Star Wars, like they'll bring in a photo of one of the actors that's kind of like a test shoot photo, and you can kind of tell, and you're like, oh, that's cool. Like, that's not a Leia or a Luke that we've seen before, like, because it's like from a test shoot. And maybe something's incorrect, like maybe the belt or the gun or the lightsaber or something is slightly different because they're still in the kind of like testing phase of where this character's going to be. But yeah.
You bring up another point of where cards have kind of come. Like I said, we've kind of seen fanatics play their hands as far as Star Wars. It got I think an easier transition maybe than what the Marvel license is, because Topps have always had Star Wars, and just the parent company was bought, and so you see some shifting around. You see some focus on some products, and actually, in not having 7 or 8 releases a year, okay, it does now. Okay, great. You're only going to have 2 or 3. Perfect. Let's try not to put them right on top of each other. And so just kind of like with Disney Plus, where it's either feast or famine. Now we have seen since we started this, we've seen from a ton of content to, all right, we're going to hold it back, and then it's going to be old home week next year when Mandalorian and Grogu come out, because, well, now it's back in the theaters. Now you're almost like, are we going to see kind of like a ramping up in the old days where maybe there's not going to be too much on TV other than maybe the animation, but now you're going to see, like, are we going to see a Journey 2 set from Topps like they did with the sequel trilogy? Are we going to see a Series 1 and a Series 2? Are we going to, and then a Chrome version, or are we going to see, I would like to think that Fanatics, like, all right, you have all the cards now. Let's have some fun with it. We've seen also that, there's a new element. There's a large number of breakers. There's the whatnot folks. There's the folks that like this. Can we harness that, but also find a way to make it interesting to get, if they keep saying, we want to 10x the hobby. Well, you've got that group there. You got to take care of them. So give them the shiny stuff, but give everybody who remembers picking this up going, it's okay to have a retail. As a matter of fact, one thing I liked Upper Deck did, and things like Flagship Star Wars did, was they made a retail variant, and I'm like, a retail parallel, and I'm like, that's awesome. And that was another reason why to grab some of these flagship blasters. I'm like, well, you can kind of piece together, because a blaster is kind of the new pack, but if you make it cheap enough, but
and that's a sports thing, right? They've done that in sports for a while. There are retail parallels,
yes.
Like that's a thing that sort of came in, which is a good way, because like when you, from a business standpoint of view, like 10xing the hobby isn't just 10xing the product.
Correct.
It's like what can we do that makes it interesting, and supporting the people around doing the whatnot stuff. And I mean, and then there's the pricing. I mean, like, you can do some really cool stuff, but I mean, can you do it at a level where everyone can get involved? Like Galactic Antiquities is so great, but I mean, like, it's not, you're not going to see a box like that for a couple of $100. Like, how does the audience change? Like, does it move completely away from like something that a 10-year-old can get involved in? Does it become something that only, grown-up people with grown-up money can get involved in? Who knows? Like, or do you make something for everyone? Do you make, it's like Garbage Pail Kids, they have their retail stuff. You can still go to Walmart and buy a blaster of Garbage Pail Chrome for $20 or whatever it is. And then they'll come out with Sapphire, which is a different sort of product which sells out in 2 minutes on Fanatics for like, I don't even know, like I'm guessing a lot more. So like, yeah, this is the interesting thing for me. It's like, how do you navigate that? Because you can't just have the adult collectors forever, because the adult collectors will age out. And if you weren't collecting cards as a kid, then you may not collect cards as an adult because it wasn't part of your childhood. Like, I collect cards today because I collected them as a kid. It's unlikely that my kids, who are 18 and 21 and 5, who didn't grow up with trading, like, they're not buying trading cards now as an adult because they didn't really have them. Admittedly, they weren't into the same sort of stuff, but like, yeah, how does Fanatics navigate that? Like, how do you make a product that a 7-year-old can afford, and then have them translate into someone who later on down the line will buy your $1,000 product when it comes out?
I think you have, when seeing at card shows over the last couple years, where you see the kids with the cases. And so now you have, where it used to be with folks like of our age, where it's like you bought cards, but you weren't thinking of the value. Now you definitely have shown kids, it's kind of like you introduce screens to kids, they look at screens. But if you introduce a card that is making, an 11-year-old pulls or gets the redemption card for that Paul Skeens, that Pittsburgh pitcher that I keep telling a kid, like, you need to unload that card as fast as possible, because this guy blows out his arm, that card is going nowhere. But you also have, now that kid who is getting it, there are kids who are pulling it for the joy of ripping it and maybe doing something with their mom and dad. There are also the kids who are going, they can't afford to buy a $200 box, but they are on mom and dad. And so for them, it's like, well, I don't want to buy the hoops because it's worthless. I want to get the prism because it's, because I'm going to get the blah, blah, blah. Now, hey, in the grand scheme of things, the dad buys a $300 box and the kid pulls the Paul Skeens, and you go, okay, you just paid for college. Congratulations. But that's a one, that's a one, that's a 1 in a million type shop. But I would say it's funny because in talking to these vendors, these table guys, at these cons, it's like the kids are fearless. They come up and go, well, here's what I'm expecting. And there's none of this haggling. They're like back and forth. And so it's a brave new world, not only for the people, the folks who have been doing this for years, but this newer element. And you're right. What happens to them as they get older? Are they just going to go, they're like, well, I could never unload these cards where what they're supposed to be valued, screw it. Or do they keep going on? Or do they eventually maybe somehow just enjoy the product at some point? It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I mean, I've had those moments, like, speaking of the, unloading the cards as quick as possible, the closest thing I've had to that was in 2000. I collected basketball cards the heaviest in like 2008, 9, 7, 8, 9, 10. Kevin Durant rookie year was a good one for me. I still have, like, at the time, I didn't realize how big of a player he was going to be. And then 2 years ago, I went through like 100,000 cards that I had, like, because I was buying 2, 3, 4 boxes a week. And I pulled out like about 30 Kevin Durant rookies from Topps base stuff, and I still I have them just sitting on a shelf, which is great. But my story like that was like, I bought a box of like Bowman something, and in it like was a Greg Oden rookie autograph. He was the #1 pick for the Trailblazers, right? So he was the first round #1 pick. He was the guy. He was gonna be the guy. I pulled the card. I'm not a Trailblazers collector, and I was just like, I literally took the sealed box to my car, opened the box in my car, pulled that card, took it back to the hobby store, and flipped it for more boxes. But like you said, right, like, I bought that card, like, I traded it for like $250 in store credit. And I think, I want to say like 2 months into his like rookie season, he blew his like knee or ankle out, and that was the end. That card is dirt now. That card is worth nothing. There's a million stories like that, but like, you know, like Zion's another one. You know, you got all these people giving Zion Williamson crap. Like they would never have followed the Pelicans if it wasn't for the fact that his rookie card is worth so much. And then when, you know, like he hurt himself, or he put weight on, like he sort of like put on some weight in the off season or while he was injured or something, and then people were just like hammering on him, and I'm just thinking this is hilarious because they're like, what is the percentage of people who really care about his career versus the people who bought like a Prism rookie card for like $4,000, and they're like, come on, man. Like, we need you. Like my investment. Like I've got to answer to my wife when this card hits the ground, you know?
It'll be interesting just as, you know, I guess the great thing is that the work is still there. And from what I saw, like, you know, I think when you look at now you get to see like a lot more of your card being pulled, especially if you're on Whatnot, or if you're seeing some of the breaker videos, and on some cases that excitement of like, I want my card to be pulled. I would like my card to be pulled by someone who understood what that card was for, or that meant. And it's like, you know, so it's almost like it's got to be a number of emotions to go like, oh, this is great, or like, yeah, and you're just like, oh, thank you for dismissing, you know, this. But it is kind of the world that we now exist in, and you go, you know, it's just a question of yeah.
Definitely thankful for it, because I think when I was doing my first sets in 2017 and stuff, you know, like the amount of times that you would see someone pull that out of a pack on YouTube or something, it was just never really. You just didn't see that happen that often, you know, whereas now we have this, and I have great friends. I've got, you know, people like Adam Marks from Garbage Chute Droids, and like I've got guys like him who gladly share a video, a link to someone pulling my card on Whatnot and that, because he's in, you know, he likes to get in on the breaks and stuff. So thanks to Adam for sharing every time, like, so one of my things gets pulled, or like Instagram, you know, like all of a sudden I know when something gets pulled because I'll get a notification on my phone here, and it'll say like, ABC Cards started following you. And I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. Like, and I go like looking at ABC Cards on their thing, and oh, look, there it is. They've just pulled something on a. So you people who still don't know, like I've been doing top sketches now for 17 to 25. So what's that? 8 years, 8 years. Like, I mean, there are still many people who've never seen anything that I've done. You know, like, and those, like that most recent Whatnot video where the guy pulled the Grievous, he pulled a big Grievous, like a sketch out of the Antiquity set. I mean, like, yeah, like it's legit. Like they reach out to me afterwards and go like, I couldn't believe, like, it's not what you're expecting. It's that at the very least, they're not expecting to see a sketch card that looks the way that mine looks.
Right.
No, like, and that's not me saying that my stuff is better or worse or whatever than anyone else's. I'm in total awe of everyone who worked on that set. I know there were not many artists on that set. I have a feeling that there may have only been 20 or 25 artists who worked on that entire Antiquity set. And you know, when I see the work that was put out by everyone else on that set, you know, like I feel like I'm lower on the tier of the people who got to work on that set. So like I'm real thankful for it. But again, like you aim to please, and so like I'm glad I have this sort of like, if for lack of a better word, I have this gimmick. I have this thing where I'm like I try to make these sketch cards look like the shiny card that I wanted to pull when I was a kid. I just have to do it myself. I have to do the backyard version of a refractor and put it together myself. So yeah, I still love it. I still love watching people pull these things out. And you know, like, even though I've been doing it for a while now, like people still, I don't know. There's a lot of cards to collect, right? There's a lot of, on the average Star Wars set, there could be 50, 100, 150 people working. Everyone's doing 20, 30, 40, 50 cards per set. That's a lot of sketch cards. So mine are still extremely hard to find, even in terms of finding sketch cards. So, yeah, I love it still.
Well, and what's interesting is that, like I said, it's been a while since we've had you on, and I think we're going to have to really shorten that time span. We're going to have to do another summer of Scotch, because it is a new audience, and even for folks who are listening to this episode, the folks who were listening to me 4 or 5 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, 2 or 3 months ago, may not be the same people who are listening to me. And so these are chances to reintroduce, to go this, one, Brent Scotchmer's work is incredible. It is a unique looking card. Once you see it, you will recognize it every time. But when you look at it, especially those portraits, I'm like, this is such a great take on it. And especially in the world of the photorealism sketch, we've evolved, Topps has evolved, where sometimes those takes, like where they were maybe a little more cartoony, less so now. I think they're looking for more of it's more standardized. This is a great way to kind of push that barrier and just go, hey, look, not only is it nostalgic to me, but it is unique to an audience, and where now there is a larger audience. And a set like, I think you belong totally in that group that did Galactic Antiquities, but now someone has seen a very large version of that. And it's almost like when you think back at going back to vintage for a second, where there was that Empire Strikes Back, poster set. They were larger ones. I think it was like a handful of cards. Whereas this seemed like maybe a one-off. This was probably a very nice idea looking forward. I think the legacy of the Galactic Antiquities, other than going like, the price, is the fact that Topps highlighted a much larger one. Like, we value this so much that the original art, that we're showing it to you at a large level. And it's like a big advertisement for, like, yeah, we're not just an insert, kids. This is legit stuff, and our place should be set in stone. It's a cornerstone of any of these sets, because the collectors who were there from the beginning, they want to see us. The new folks go, this is a 101. This is valuable. It's not just a scene. So it's all in the mix, but it's an ever evolving target. And when we get you back, summer of, fall of Scotch, winter of Scotch, one of those things, we're going to have just as much to talk about as we did on this episode.
Yeah, I always wonder whether, like, now that we're, we've been talking for an hour or so now, and I'm like, did I say anything of any real value? I'm glad I asked Greg which came first, Star Wars or cards, and then another couple of things. But I was like, did I say much of any value here? But regardless, like, it's always good to talk to someone who's sort of like, who's deep in it. You're going to the card shows, you're going to the conventions, you're going and you're seeing, you really have, more boots on the ground as far as, like, you're seeing what people's buying habits are like, and the trends are as far as, like, stuff. And, you're one of those, you are an outlier yourself in the fact that you still care about the base card, and that it's not just about, like, all too often you've seen someone buy a $200 box of cards and just rip packs every 3 seconds and just, and then
I
just,
flinch a little when I see that. Yeah.
And then at the end of it, there's an autograph there, and then they just move on to the next box, and they just keep ripping. And I've been guilty of that in the past myself, but then I get to go back and I get to, now that the money has been spent, the packs have been opened, there's no going back. Now I can go back and go through and actually, like, enjoy and go and, like, look at the backs of the cards. Like, we know now that these companies are putting Easter eggs and stuff, right? So, like, whether it's a blank back or whether it's a variation, a short print, Upper Deck are very good at doing, like, short print or variations on the artwork, which is great. Like, those are the things that, the collector who is sitting on, a couple of thousand base cards from boxes they've opened from the last couple of years, you actually don't know what you're sitting on. There might be something in there that you didn't notice before. And I am 100% guilty of it. I do it all the time. I have probably over 1 million trading cards in the shoebox things. And every now and then I go back through them, and every now and then I'll go like, I could barely tell that it was like a a colored refractor. Like I could barely tell, so I didn't think of anything of it at the time. And then I turn it over, I'm like, oh wow, this is numbered out of 149. And it's just been sitting in this shoebox because I thought it was just a base refractor this whole time. And in actual fact, it's not. And that happens to me more times than I would care to admit.
Exactly.
But it's great because it gives me a reason to go back through. And again, it's like I collected cards in 08, basketball cards in 08. Like it was only in like 2022 or 2023 that I was like, hang on a second, that's Kevin Durant's rookie year. And then I go through back all these boxes and find like, and another one, and another one, and another one. And so like, yeah, like you don't know like what you're always sitting on. The base cards shouldn't be discounted. There could be a gem in there. Or there could be someone named Greg who wants to buy them from you.
No, but still, no, but I think just like this conversation tonight, you know, we're visiting, you know, like we're visiting again and, you know, catching up, and what's great about it is that there's still stuff in there, right? It's like going back to that box, you know, from a couple years ago and going, oh, you know, we talked about stuff and very relevant conversation for that era, the stuff you're working on, your process, but there's still new ground to go over. And that's what's fun about having guests on time and time again. It's not just like, it's not a retread. It's a lot of it is, you know, we're going over stuff that we hadn't had a chance to talk to, some new stuff that's working on. And then you go, yeah, it's a new audience. There are folks out there who haven't heard me talk to you, or maybe they haven't dove back into the catalog and go, what's this whole Scotch business? So that's kind of like what's fun, and it keeps it fresh. And it's just one of the things I'm just, you know, count my blessings that, you know, I have you amongst my, you know, friends in the hobby, and it's just so much fun talking. But also there's so much more ground there. You're a musician, you're an artist, you know, father, collector, all this stuff, everything that just makes, you know, a well-rounded person with more shelf space than I have. And I'm always jealous to see it because I'm like, I would love that in my life. My wife would be like, no.
No, it is honestly, it is good. You know, not many people get to see the what's behind the one of one, like the sketch, as far as like, you know it's a sketch, but to kind of go like, oh, they're actual people. You can reach out to these people who did the, you know, especially if something crazy, like if you go to Walmart and you open a blaster and there's a one of one hand drawn sketch in there, which happens a lot. I mean, to the logistics behind getting that hand drawn one of one, like just to get that from blank to, in my case, Australia, you know, and then go through all my process and then go back from Australia to hop, skip, jump all the way back to Philadelphia or wherever it goes, like, and then it gets reviewed and then there's a lot of work that goes into that one of one. Even your most basic sketches need to go through many sets of hands, many sets of approvals and okays and all kinds of stuff. I mean, that's the part I like when I see a sketch card, is like I see someone pull like a sketch on Whatnot or whatever, and I'm like, you have no idea how many miles that thing has traveled. That thing has traveled like literally from one end of the earth to the other and then back again, and then been strategically and randomly placed into a pack, you know, for someone else's enjoyment. And you hope that the reaction is like, wow, isn't that cool that that's not just like a photo on a card. It's actually like a drawing. It's actually like something, someone handled it in their hand and did the work, and it moved around and somehow magically appeared in this sort of foil wrapper somewhere.
Oh. The process still fascinates me. I don't care how many times I hear it or how many times I think about it, or, you know, when you think about all that, there's just so much out there. Well, before we kind of, you know, draw things to a close, I know for you, it's the morning. For us, it's the evening. Where can people find you, and where do you normally hang out online? And what would you like to kind of talk about as far as like anything kind of coming up that you are wanting to kind of talk about?
As far as stuff that's coming up, I'm sort of in between projects. Like, again, still have been doing some work with POG, the milk cap company POG from the 90s. They released their first first ever hobby product. I designed some of the milk caps, the packaging, the box, the wrappers, all sorts of stuff on that. That's pretty cool. That's another childhood little dream come true. Recently completed jobs for I think they're out now, but Star Wars Hyperspace, Antiquities, Garbage Pail Kids, Chrome 7, Batman Metal for Upper Deck, and maybe DC Annual for Upper Deck as well. Currently working on a set for RRParks cards that's centered around legendary boxers from back in the day, boxers, Muhammad Ali and stuff like that. And a couple of commissions and things, and gigging all over the place. So look, I hang out where I hang out. I'm there. I'm rarely seen, but always around. And I'm B Scotchmer on everything. BSCOTCHMER on pretty much everything.
Awesome. And yeah, I think we should pencil in some time in the summer. We'll revisit the Summer of Scotch because I would like to go a little more into the Pogs and some of the other work. I love what RRParks does, and for those who haven't heard of him, he's a one-man band that does a lot of Kickstarters for sets, and he covets the sketch artist and really does a good job. And a lot of the folks you've heard on this program, he has in his great stable of artists, and he does a lot of great one-off properties. I know I recently got something where it was like pirates. There was a pirate set that he is working on, and I was like, I think I get on the Romans, the Roman emperors, and so it's just fun. It's good non-sport goodness, but it's something when you see, like for example, I may not be able to find a Brent Scotchmer sketch in a Star Wars set, but when you have things like Garbage Chute Droids or some of these other ones, it's a great opportunity to, if you like an artist, to find them that fits the way you collect or the budget that you collect. So that's what I love about it. But yeah, we're gonna have to have you back, man. I'm telling you.
Big shout to RRParks, probably one of the super hard working. I mean. And his neighbors must think he's insane because he will often show me a photo of like a pallet, like a shipping pallet of trading cards on his driveway, and I'm like, what do your neighbors think, man? He'll be like, I've just received 350,000 loose trading cards that I need to put in boxes now. Insane, crazy.
Well, I'm telling you, it's definitely fall backwards but Scotch forward. I'm trying to find something we're getting on a t-shirt, buddy. But anyway, it's.
Well, I'm glad it's getting some use. My name is the the thing that I just have to keep correcting. If it's Scotchman, Scotchmere, and that's it. And that's after we've gone through Brett, Brendan, Brettley, Brett. My name, if my name could be said wrong, it has been said wrong and is constantly said wrong. But I don't care. My thing I say to people is they will go like, "Is it Brett? Is it Brendan? Brettley? Would it?" And I'm like, "Look, if you just shout in my general direction, I'm most likely to turn around." So yeah,
especially if you have the last name McLaughlin. Yeah, as we found out with Brian Hickey, I asked Brian Hickey, I'm like, could you pronounce my name the way the Irish name is supposed to be? And so it's like, okay, that's how it is. Not totally not the way I pronounce it.
I was gonna ask you because in Australia, I would say your name is McLaughlin.
And you would be right. But we
somewhere over. Why is it McLaughlin?
Somewhere over the millennia that this family has been in the United States, and I think we're the 17. It predates the Revolutionary War, at least this little strain of the McLaughlins, but it got to where it was McLaughlin, and it has different spellings too. There's an O, there's an A, there's all these, and so because census forms were like, all right, that's good enough, it's close enough for government work, and so yeah, and after the family's been in the U.S. so long, nobody cared, nobody wrote it down, nobody passed along like, hey, maybe it would be important to figure out where we're from. No, nobody cared. That's Americans.
Isn't it insane how much of the world was the honor system? For so long, it was just kind of like, if you say it, we'll believe you.
Yeah, like Ellis Island, they just write down a name. Fine, we've got.
Yeah, welcome to America. What's your name? Oh, Smith. Sure, why not?
Yeah, why not? Well, it's my on my mother's side, her father was Glitch, So not only very German, but it's also, there are also times, like I said, where it's like people didn't want to have the full, like we don't want to have that name, or they change their name or things like that. And so, yeah. And then is it at TSCH? Is it TCH? And so, you think now it's like someone makes a typo that it's like, oh, and you're like, no, back then it was like,
yeah, we're denying you this loan because you're like we can't, your birth certificate is invalid because you put one letter wrong or something like that. Yeah. It's everything is scrutinized down to like the tiniest margin now, whereas like back then it was just kind of like, I don't like my name, I think I'm just going to write something else because it's 18 something or other, and no one's going to go to Germany to check on to see if I wrote the right thing down. So that's
exactly
crazy, right?
Yeah. The only thing that the only rule that I ever tried to obey was the fact that my mom, bashed into me. It's like M, small c, capital L, because if you get lazy and you don't capitalize that L, I heard it. So that's the one thing. No space, just it's like capital L. And so a lot of times, I've even had to, the voter registration folks, like they can't find me because there they have it MC space. And all of a sudden they try to put it in the other. And my mechanic, same way. For whatever reason, the voter registration and my mechanic can never find me until I go, oh, yeah, you got to do that. Because however they typed it in, I'm like, whatever.
Like, and both versions are like valid. Like there will be people out there with the same last name as you, except it does have the space. So that's legit.
Guaranteed.
And then yours doesn't have the space, and that's also legit. Like,
it is what it is. All right, Brent.
Cool,
until next time, as we say, until the summer, there will be a lot more stuff to come out and talk about. But it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I wish you and your family well.
You made my Monday. Monday mornings can be a bit of a drag, but you made my Monday morning pretty cool. Like, what better way to come off the weekend? It's the weekend. You're like, oh, I've got to go to work. I've got to start doing my thing. But like, what better way to get up at 7 a.m. with a coffee and just go straight into trading card talk? I'm living the dream, Greg.
You're living the dream.
Talking about trading cards on a Monday morning. Not many people get to talk about trading cards on a Monday morning, but I do.
Thank you.
I'd like to check out, refuel my ship, prepare for my immediate departure.
Once again, I want to thank my guest, Brent Scotchmer, for being on the program. It was a pleasure to get a chance to reconnect with him after a couple years. And, I think we're going to have him back. He's just too fun to keep away, and it's always a pleasure to talk with him. All right, I'm going to let Card Squadron take it out, and we'll talk to you soon.
The Rebel Base Card podcast focuses on cards, collecting, and the Star Wars community, and appreciates you coming along for the ride.
If you have any feedback for this episode, you can reach out to the program in a number of ways. You can leave a comment on the Instagram post for this episode. You can also DM Greg on Instagram at Rebel Base Card.
Make sure to also follow the Rebel Base Card on Twitter and Facebook at Rebel Base Card. If you want, you can send an email to greg@rebelbasecard.com.
And you can find show notes for this and all episodes on the website rebelbasecard.com. In the Star Wars Card Trader app and just about every other one, you can find Greg at CornFedTech.
The Rebel Base Card uses the hashtag Card Squadron as a way to alert friends about cool cards and recent drops in the galaxy far, far away. It's a great way to bring our community a little bit closer together and help one another finish our sets in time. We collect, communicate, and commiserate. Well, at least when we run out of credits or crystals to spend on our digital collections. Join the fun, even if all the other cool squadron names were already taken. And remember, we collect as one and would be honored if you join us.
And if you are a sketch card artist, or Star Wars artist or collector, cosplayer, and want to talk about your work, your craft or passion, drop Greg a line. I'm sure he'd love to hear your story. You can also help the show by leaving a comment or review on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you got this episode.
Otherwise, the mission is clear. Keep those cards out of the hands of the Empire, and the Rebel Base Card will return soon.
This podcast is not affiliated in any way with Topps, Disney, or Star Wars, nor is it endorsed by Disney or Lucasfilm, and is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only.
All names and sounds and any other related items are properties of their respective trademarks and or copyright holders here in the U.S. and abroad. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com.
That's it.